Why, hello all. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today on the topic of coaching the uncoachable. My name is Sandra Mall, and I am the operations manager here at Coaching Out of the Box, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Behind the scenes, we also have Stephanie Eastcott, who will be helping out with the webinar as well, so you will see her name pop up in the chat. The reason for today is for you to walk away with top insights from ICF Master Certified Coaches on the topic of coaching the uncoachable, as well as to get to know a little more about us here at Coaching Out of the Box. So please note that the chat is open, and we highly encourage you all to participate in this webinar by utilizing the chat to share any questions or comments that you do have. You will notice once you open your chat that there is a to field or a drop down next to a to field, and we ask that you please choose all panelists and attendees in that drop down so that we can all see the brilliance that is shared during the webinar. After the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email from us that will include the slides from today's webinar, a link to the recording, and you will also, for those of you in attendance for the entire length of the webinar, you will also receive a certificate worth 1 ICF CCE. So let's get started. Before we get started, I just want to very briefly highlight some of our upcoming programs here at Coaching Out of the Box. So whether you are looking to start your coach education or are looking to further your education, we do have programs for you. You can see a few of them highlighted on the slide here. And please feel free to reach out at any time if you do have any questions in regards to our programs or coaching in general. We're always happy to have a conversation with you. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to introduce to you all Alison Hendren. She is our CEO and founder of Coaching Out of the Box. Alison is an ICF Master Certified Coach, and one of her many accomplishments is that the flagship program here at Coaching Out of the Box, the 555 Coaching Skills Training Program, has been delivered to over 30,000 participants in 38 countries. So Alison, if you want to come on and say hi.
Hello. Welcome everybody, and great to see the comments of all the different locations that people are coming from: Ecuador, Greece, BC, and Phoenix, and on and on. So I think when Merv and I were talking about it, I'm going to introduce Merv. Merv, show your lovely face, and I'm going to introduce Merv. Merv is our Chief Coaching Officer at Coaching Out of the Box. So he supports and leads our fantastic coach facilitator team. And in addition to that, this is amazing. I didn't know this. Merv shared this with me the other day. He has over 12,000 hours of coaching. So if ever there's someone who's come up with people who could potentially be uncoachable, or maybe has a few opinions about it, that is definitely Merv. And I just really want to thank Merv for coming. And so Merv and I got together and we were talking about this next webinar and what we could do to bring value and what we're experiencing ourselves and seeing out in the world. And this was the topic that really we felt hit the nail on the head. And so, you know, I want to start the conversation. Let's start a conversation. We talked about that. So we're going to have a conversation. We want you fully participating in the conversation as much as is possible via the chat. We've got Sandra and Stephanie sort of noticing some of the comments, and I think Sandra, you've got to show slide number 9, because this is what we kind of want to think of this as. Can you show slide 9, Sandra, for us? There we go. So when Merv and I were talking, we want to have a good old fireside chat about this coaching the uncoachable. We just want to open it up, unpack it, and share what we've learned, and also tap into your brilliance as well, because we know there's loads of it on this webinar, and share some tips about it too. And so Merv, here's the conversation we're having.
Yes.
You know, what is what do you think, or who do you think, or how would you describe someone who is uncoachable? And Sandra, you can take our fireside chat slide away now. That's totally fine. But what,
Yeah.
yeah, when we were talking about, what do you think about this
Well, I
coaching
like
the
the guys,
uncoachable?
and of course it maybe dates us, but with the Muppet Show, the guys in the
Oh yeah,
balcony. Um,
right.
I wasn't suggesting we were that old, but I like it because that's kind of what it is. It's the uncoachable is somebody who comes from a different perspective, or isn't going the same direction as you. Isn't following the plot. Um,
Uh,
I would say.
Well,
Um,
hang on. I
yeah,
got to ask you about that.
yeah,
So someone who isn't coming from the same direction as you and not following the plot.
yeah.
So are you referring to this when you're coaching someone, when you're interacting with someone? Like, can you give a bit more context to that?
Yeah. Because you see, our coaches, we as coaches think we do really cool stuff, and we want to share that with the world. We want to heal and cure the world. And so when we come with this all fired up and brimstone, ready to save the world, and got our magical capes on,
Mhm.
sometimes there's people that aren't wanting to be saved, or
Yeah.
not buying the stuff, or we're too
Mhm.
in their face. And so I think part of what makes people uncoachable is our enthusiasm for what we think we can do for them, or to them, or whatever the direction is.
Mhm.
And so, to me, that would be the first throttle, is to say, whoa, where are you coming from? Are you too much over the top in this moment? We all get there. So this isn't a complaint about new coaches, old coaches.
Mhm.
Um, there are days when you're all fired up thinking that, you are the God's gift to this person's life. And sometimes you are. Um,
Mhm.
but if they're not ready to receive it, I would think is the challenge, right?
Right. What do we need to do as coaches to really support that happening? And I'm just wondering too, because we're in very, very unique times right now and have been in it for quite a while. I know I'm getting weary of it, and I'm sure many others are, but and nevertheless, um, and I welcome comments from the chat as well. I myself, in the conversations that I've been having with people who connect with Coaching Out of the Box and are asking us questions and so on and so forth. My gosh, I have never before seen people who are really searching for meaning. I'm just seeing it
Yeah.
so much more, and that can actually inform and connect with the coaching and the uncoachable. I'm just wondering, Merv, from your perspective, and uh, anybody else who would like to comment, uh, what are you noticing?
Well, I mean, I think you're right. I think there's a great need out there, and that fires us up to solve the need.
Mhm.
But I also think, one of the reasons people become uncoachable.
Mm.
Well, let me reframe that. I'll get back to my point in a sec. I want to clear up something in my own mind. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a person on earth that's uncoachable. I do think, however, there are every one of us that is uncoachable on certain topics. I mean, would you consider yourself to be coachable?
No.
No, me either. That's the joke of this. I wouldn't be either. And I was reflecting. I think there's only two people on Earth, on planet Earth, that I will, be coachable for, and that's our friend Cheryl Smith in Vancouver, and
Yes.
Celine Burley in now Geneva. Um, but it's the willingness to be coached on every single topic just doesn't happen. So you, as a coach, you got to figure out, is this the topic that they're willing to invite you into? Is this the one, or are they dealing with
Mhm.
something else? And so to go back to your other point of, there's a huge time of need. Yeah, there's a huge time of need, but are we hitting the individual when they're ready to be talking about their need, about their openness, about their searching for meaning? Or are we talking to them when their mind is busy thinking amongst themselves, processing themselves? Um, And so I think that contributes to the uncoachability of certain times is where are they in their mindset? And just to kind of extend, to kind of go back to the other point as well. I mean, one of the reasons I'm not coachable is, all due respect to the folks that have tried to coach me, is I probably asked myself the same questions already. Right? I mean, I've in my mind been coaching myself, and so I'm looking for that kind of coach that takes me beyond my own thinking. And because I muddled it already, I'm not open to that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, a powerful, potent, fabulous coaching, and it takes practice, 12,000 hours in your case.
Well, yeah, but 11,000 of them were for the uncoachable. So really.
Yes, and I've had loads of experience with that. But it's that, not that surface, or we got to really, to have that long-term sustainable change in our clients, or that willingness to move forward and take action and make something happen or solve a particular issue or challenge or whatever it is, we got to be really riding with them, and we've got to know and find a way. How do we get in there? Because I think, in my experience, some of the clients that I've worked with over the years, they'll start soft, as I call it. They'll start with the kind of the simple stuff. I don't mean simple, but more easier stuff. And if they're not getting into that deeper, potent, powerful issue that's going on for them, or challenge or whatever, I ain't doing my job. And
Right.
It's all just what I call nice, easy coaching. And they're still uncoachable all the way through.
Yeah,
They're
true.
just nice and easy, and it sounds really kind of neat, but it's really not doing anything.
Right.
And I think, in my experience too, personally, like you say, you're uncoachable. Yeah, if I'm not getting that real understanding, that real sense that they are truly interested in me,
Mhm.
and have that sense of caring, and are not coming at me too fast,
Yes.
right? And Sandra, have you got something to say?
I have a great comment
Oh,
in the
good.
chat that fits right into exactly what you're
Oh,
saying.
good.
It is from Ada, and it says, someone not wanting to change. They're wanting to be acknowledged for where they are, accepted where they are, and wanting to be heard. It may take longer to get to the point of wanting to make changes. They need that acknowledgement first, and for longer than most.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant, because there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of joy in being in the muck. I mean, there really is. There's a lot of fun when you're kind of stuck, because there's reward. There's not a lot of accountability. I don't mean to make it diminish it, but we all jazz from being stuck. And that idea of just being heard, exhausting, getting it all out there so that I have no more excuses but to move forward. I do think that's where coaching plays. The question is how does a coach in our business get there? But absolutely true. I love the point. Sometimes it's just nice to cry in the puddle, and that people get stuck there.
And when you're in that situation, and I mean, there's loads of times that happens. I keep thinking of a comment from a colleague that I used to work with at Royal Roads in their executive coaching program. And he would say, and I love it, and I remember it all the time, that people need, and this is Scott Richardson, wonderful, wonderful coach. Anyway, he would say, people need to be seen, heard, and understood. And when you're not doing that as a coach, when you're not really seeking to understand people know that.
Yeah.
And they sense it, and they feel it, and they kind of hold back, or they don't feel safe. They don't feel that they that they can speak whatever is the key issue that's going on for them, or the key challenge, or the key dream.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
the key dream, or they want to even admit that they have a particular dream, or something that they're wanting to do. And so, but I want to get back to, sorry, the comment, now I've lost it here, that Sandra, what the question was, someone who is, sorry, say that again.
It wasn't necessarily a question, it was more of a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that essentially what you're saying is people just want to be acknowledged for where they are first, and they need to feel heard for where they are first. Sometimes, before they will be open to change. In that sense, was the premise of it. We do have some great questions in here, though, if you guys are ready to
Good. Yes, because join the conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see.
We have. Let me go down here. There's a great one here. It causes me to think, how do I become present to this client? How do I demonstrate my compassionate curiosity?
I love it. You know what? I want to be provocative here, but I think you just decide not to coach them. What I mean by that is you decide not to be successful with them. See, the challenge is that when we come with coaching, we have processes, we have skills, and we try to apply them, boom, boom, we bang them in. Sometimes we just have to be curious. Sometimes we just have to be searching for the reason why they're not coachable. I mean, there's 1,000 different reasons why somebody's not coachable. It could be because they're resisting admitting what the issues are. But I think our angle has to kind of back away from our process and just be with them and just be curious. Why are they there now? Why are they there in that moment with us? What is it about them right now that is causing this interaction? Alison?
And our job is to set that environment. Our job is to make it easier for them to talk about it. And the biggest one, listening. Listening, reflecting back. And I love your comment, Merv, about get off the coach thing, meaning pull back on that and just be with another human being is what I think you were saying.
Yes.
And really connect with them and hear them and reflect back. And by the way, I, in my coaching, I do that a lot. I've done that a lot because I'm trying to understand. And in trying to understand what they're talking about or what their issue or challenge is, informs me as the coach how they're doing, how I can support them in moving forward. But it goes back to, if you're doing a lot of the talking, it ain't coaching. If you're the one who is spewing out all kinds of pearls of wisdom or so on, that usually is not coaching. Do you believe me? You got a bit of a look on your face.
That's where we so easily get into that trusted advisor mode, or the tell mode, right? Because that's if you've got somebody who is not open to your coaching, you tend to push harder. Like it's like you're dealing with somebody who maybe speaks in a different language, and you speak louder, you speak your language even louder. And that, of course, serves no value at all. And so we can, I like that point of you just kind of resync, engage, and say, whoa, I'm not wearing my coach hat. I'm wearing my human hat. I'm with another human. I'm curious where this human is. I want to share a piece of this moment with them. So what does that look like? What does that mean, right?
And I'm also just going over to the chat here. Alison Wolf, hi Alison. Sometimes a client will get stuck in an emotional place for weeks and months, anger at unacknowledged, I've been there, contributions.
I've seen you there, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, you've seen me there repeatedly, being wronged in some way, and there's a resistance, inability to shift away from this. Any ideas for how they can be unstuck from the negative emotions and resentment? What are the ideas?
Well, my first one is to ask them a very direct question. What are they getting out of staying where they are? Because they're getting something out of it. They're getting some level of, I mean, us humans do not do anything that's not in our best interest. I don't mean that in a selfish way, but we really do not do anything that is no longer in our best interest. And so if we're in that muddled mode, if we're in that resistive mode, or that feeling of being victim even or vulnerabilized, the individual's getting something from that. They may be getting, and to me that's a curious. So I don't want to diagnose it even over the phone yet.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, cool. Well, let's understand why you're there and what's the value of staying here. Because if it's really valuable, then you need to stay here. You need to stay as the victim. If you're going to a deep dive on this particular emotional issue, then why would I want to take you out of it? Why would I not allow you to get into that deep dive, process it, and move through it? But to really understand that they're what is it they're getting, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm just noticing too, what's the benefit of staying where you are? That's a great question.
Yeah.
What do you said it in many different ways, but that to me is really important. And what are the I think the other piece is what are the origins of this? What are the origins of this not wanting to move or not want to stay where they are? And I'll tell you a huge one. And now I'm curious too of people's comments right now. I mean, there's always change going on in the world, right? But we've had, massive, unbelievable change happening from so many factors. So, what at this time, what do people need? What is it that we as coaches can do to create or support that movement? I think it's in my mind, one piece, a huge piece is fear.
Okay. Tell me more.
It's fear. Well, they're afraid. They don't know what to do. They don't have a freaking clue. It's crazy. It's unknown. They're dealing, how many of us are, all of us are working from home or, in very different situations. The kids are around, they're trying to do their schoolwork in some cases. And they're dealing with, and I know myself, even myself and some of the clients I work, they're exhausted.
Right.
Because stuff is coming at them so fast with these complicated situations that they've never dealt with before. And they're working for organizations who are trying to figure out, how do we navigate? I mean, we just did some work with an organization who was so used to being together, right? It's affecting everything. It's affecting the space they lease, how many floors in an office tower they're going to take up after, going forward, all the dances, all the ways, but there's a lot of fear in how do we handle it and how do we do it? And I see Mark's comment here, the work-life balance has changed for everyone. Overwhelm. Oh, yeah. How do you deal with someone who's overwhelmed? I mean, that's and just, it's like they can't even, they just can't even take it in. How as coaches do we support that forward movement in some way?
Well, you see, I think that's a symptom that's ripe for coaching when we do it right. And the symptom is overwhelmed. And one of the things that coaching, in my opinion, does is break stuff down, whether it's fear, because it's this overwhelming, oh my gosh, or it's overwhelmed. It's like, so what is, forget about what your end goal is going to be. Forget what you're going to be like when you grow 5 years from now. Let's decide what you're going to do 5 minutes from now, right? So coaching has that capacity to really help people discern what's the truth. And actually, there's a really good question. I heard this the other day. When somebody says, I'm overwhelmed and we're a fear. Well, what do you know for sure? What do you know for absolute sure? Well, I know today's Wednesday. That's what I know for sure. Do you know that there's a car coming at you, that there's going to be a bomb? No, I don't know that. And so you're really trying to separate the truth about things, or the truth about the moment, or the facts of the moment, with the awfulization that we as humans do naturally, right? And it's real, really, it's a cool technique to really kind of get people out of, well, that's, what I know to be true is, I need more information. Great.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do about
Yeah.
that? So that helps. Another uncomfortable, sorry, go ahead. I gotta
No, go ahead.
I did my homework. I have a little piece of paper with my homework here.
Oh, yes. And I was going to.
So I was
Yeah.
listing all of the reasons to be uncoachable, and a lot of the folks in the chat have got these: the overwhelmed, frustrated, given up. But the one I thought was interesting was sometimes people who are too pliable are uncoachable. They're just too willing to try. They're too. I don't call them yes men, but they're willing to please. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know anything about it.
And
Nothing.
no, and so those folks are an interesting challenge, because they give you all the signs that it's working. They're given you're getting all the attributes that your coaching is magical, and they're saying yes to everything, but they're not really making traction. Right?
Okay, so when you see that happening in a coachee that you have, what do you do?
Well, first I ask for testimonial, because that means they're probably going to give me a good testimonial. And then, good question. So when you got somebody pliable, I would say you got to ground it. We know that as coaches, you have to ground it in what's in a value or personal interest. But we can come up with great action plans, but it's getting underneath that. So what about this action plan that's working for you? Why would you not? Why would you choose to not do this action plan? All those kinds of questions that anchor it in something more realistic, or something more realistic's the wrong word. Real, anyways. Like a principle, like a value, like a belief, right? We can spend too much time at the intellectual level. Coaching is an intellectual sport. It is about the intellectual piece, and we've got to take it from what makes sense, or I should do that, to I won't be a human being unless I do this. I won't be whole. You got to really tie it to something that is near and dear to the belly button.
I'm just thinking at this point, I'm wondering about the value of getting that. It's slide number 10. Don't put it up yet, Sandra. I want to check in with Merv first. Putting that up on the screen, because you're talking about that one, and there's a number, and I always want people to be able to walk away with some things that they can do, or bring into their next coaching session, and so on. Are you okay with that?
So this was my homework. Yeah. Thank you for showing me my homework. Woo!
Yeah, let's put it up.
Thank you. Look at that. What brilliance that is. The one I really wanted to talk to you about. Have you ever had a "you fixed me"? Have you ever had somebody says, just tell me what to do?
Yes.
What do you do?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so it depends, but sometimes I'll take my coaching hat off if I know, right? If I know that there's a couple of things, okay, hang on a second, and I might share that, but I still want to find out how does that work for you? What else could be different about this? What have you thought about? To try to sort of get a sense, because again, I'm not the expert in that unique situation. I think I might be, because you see, in my experience, when we get into coaching, and as we're coaching, and I still have it, we're recovering tellers and knowers.
Yes.
That's the culture is, we tell, we know, here's what you got to do. I mean, this is old, but I betcha, we've got quite a few people on this webinar right now, And I betcha, how many have fallen into that at times and recognize that they've probably overtold and knowed. That's not the right way to say it, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, the problem solving mindset, right? Which is what you're talking about is so
Mhm.
alive. But I want to get clarity though, because I actually think
Mhm.
in the moments you're dealing with a topic that the individual feels uncoachable on, there's some value, and I think this is what you're saying, but there's some value in you being that trusted advisor for a little bit,
Mhm.
because you're
Mhm.
demonstrating that you're willing to collaborate, which is what you're wanting them to do with you. You're
Yeah.
demonstrating that trust because you believe that you can share. So you're role modeling when you're doing that trusted advisor thing. Uh,
Yes.
that gets them moving forward. I agree that you don't want to get stuck there because it's real fun problem solving somebody else's issue.
Yeah.
But would you agree that you kind of you got to do that dance back and forth? I think that's really what you're declaring, right?
Yeah. And that's why, yes, absolutely. And that's why people will hire you as a coach. Not always, but because of what you bring to your coaching and because of what they maybe hear about your background as well. Um, at least certainly I've experienced that, and not always. And I think we can get into a funny one where we don't want to give anything, right? We don't
Right.
want to give anything, and that's not realistic. That's not real life in my experience, because they're tapping into your ideas, thoughts, and wisdom
Yes.
and brilliance
Yeah.
as well. And our job is to support them in finding their own unique way. And if telling them something that you've learned or known, as long as it's not taking up the whole entire coaching, I think is can be valuable and can actually unhinge them
Mm-hmm.
from being uncoachable. Because I'm going back to the fear side. When I'm in fear, and when I see my clients in fear, and there's been a lot of fear, um, it's really hard. It's really, really hard because they're so, you know, frightened that they are struggling. So how helpful if you can kind of engage in an interactive conversation with them to problem solve a
Yes.
bit
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
at times.
I agree. I agree with you. Let's address two things that have been the
Yeah.
chat so far. So I'll just list them.
Yeah, there's a
One
lot.
is what do we mean by capacity? And that last one is the kind of when they're, the prisoners, the prisoners of war. In other words, they get assigned to you as a coach. So just for clarity, so when I mean capacity, sometimes people just don't have the capacity to follow through on their action plans. I mean, they don't have the physical means, they may not have the timing, they may not have the ability, the skills, the money. And so, part of a job of a coach is to create an action plan for the individual or help them facilitate an action plan for themselves. But part of the job is also to make sure that the action plan that they are creating is doable. And sometimes we can put them into uncoachable modes by giving them an action plan that is brilliant, but I don't have the $10 or the $100,000 to spend to do that. And so that's what I mean by capacity, is that when the idea is great, but the practical is not possible. The other is though, and you must have had this in your experience, when the manager tells their employee that you are their coach and you are now
Oh,
coach
yeah, yeah,
employee number
yeah.
one and
It's bad.
employee number one. And so, you need coaching is usually what comes from the manager, right? You need to be coached, and I'm going to let you talk to Alison. And so now you have this prisoner of war coming at you, or this, somebody said it, the voluntold, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what do you do about that? What have you done about that? When you get the
Yeah.
voluntold, which means there's money in it for you to keep coaching this person. There's expectation from the sponsor, whether it be HR and the leader, that you're gonna fix this person. And now you've got some moral combinations and pressures here. And then you've got this individual that you're face to face with them. So what do you do with that?
What do I do with it?
Yeah, what do you just say? Forget it. Forget it. Just
Oh, I, yeah, I don't, it goes back to another comment, they're voluntold, or they have to do it, or whatever. And I will have a conversation with that person and see, we will have a conversation to kind of see, is there any, is this person open? Is this person, but I'll tell you, I've had this happen, because a lot of people still don't really get what real coaching is.
yes.
They still think it's going to be an expert coming in to consult, basically tell them no, or it's about remediation, right? And they're being fixed. But you know what I've had? And this goes back to creating that environment, creating that safe place. Our job is to create that safe place where you're curious and you're really focusing on them and you're connecting with them. And I've had times where they started off being very, very uncoachable, but
Yes.
because of the environment, and we're going to share some tips around that in a bit, but because of the environment that's created, and I don't mean I'm the end all be all here, but creating that environment where we actually slow down and we actually listen can make a really big difference. Sorry, go ahead, Sandra, you've got something to jump in with.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No.
Two great questions that have been floating around that will tie really great into this conversation here. One of them is, how do you assess readiness for coaching? And the other one is a kind of a suggestion in the sense of wanting to know if this would work. From Judy, it says, would stepping out of the coach role for a period of time just to build trust be a possibility, and just to discover the real needs of the coachee?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Oh, they've
Okay.
got to
Yep.
they've got to believe that you're somebody that they can ride with on this very can be very compelling journey. They've got to believe in your credibility. You've got to, you got to get them to think, oh, I can work with this person. In my experience, Merv, I'm curious.
No, I agree. So there's three thoughts that kind of mind to that brilliant idea. Do I step out of the role? And the answer is yeah. But you also explain that you are stepping out of the role. So for example, if you've got somebody, who is, a prisoner who's been voluntold, oftentimes I'll catch myself saying, well, look, let's pause this coaching thing for a sec. Let's just pause. If I was your boss, what do you think your boss would like to talk to? Or, if I was in your position, I might think about this. And so I'm kind of stepping away I'm stepping into a different role, whether it's a training role or trusted advisor role or a counselor role, and then coming back to coaching, and that kind of that dance between wearing that other hat. So if I've got somebody who's voluntold, they have to work with me, and we've got 6 sessions to do it in, I would simply say, well, let's pause coaching for a moment. Like let's not get too in this. What do you really want? Just between you and I, just between us people here. What's most important to you? And then that you can get back into coaching. I don't know if that explains it, but that's, to me, the stepping out. Why I'm pointing that out is that if you don't articulate that you're stepping out of the coaching role, you can confuse them. You can, you can sound like a trainer. If you don't tell them, listen, let me tell you what I know, what I've learned from a course that I took. So let me share a concept, an idea for you. If I don't tell you that I'm stepping into my trainer mode, then they're going to be confused as to what hat I'm speaking from. So that's certainly clarity. How do you assess readiness? You ask them. You just ask, and you shut up and listen. Is this the right time for you? Is it or not? And I don't know if there's a checklist you need. It's just a matter of, what does ready mean for them? Are you ready to have a conversation? Are you ready to put up with 6 weeks with me? Are you ready for a deep dive? What are they ready for? And the other rambling I have, because that was all rambling, here's some more rambling. Don't get yourself ever into a position where you're getting voluntold clients. I mean, rule number 3 of the ICF coaching competencies, or, competency number 3, establishing, maintain agreements. Don't ever get yourself in a position where the sponsor thinks that you're the fixer, or that you take on the ownership of that individual being successful at their targets or whatever it is. Part of that maintaining agreements and establishing agreements not only starts with the client, with the one-to-one conversation, which many coaches do, but it also starts at the beginning of the engagement, setting it up to the, allowing the engagement to talk about, so for example, when I talk to the HR person, I tell them very clearly the conversation that I and the individual are going to have are not just about work. It will be about their private life. It will be about where they need to take me. And if we spend 90 minutes into where, about how to work with their kids or whatever it is, it's going to add value. And so I take those handcuffs off. And so that's all part of establishing agreements with the sponsor, with the leader, as well as with the coachee.
And I think it's important because it's interesting. I'm seeing some of these other comments where some are nervous to maybe nervous isn't the right word, but they feel that they're not allowed to take off their coaching hat for a few minutes or get to know the person or find out if they're, they want to do this and so on, because they're following the ICF competencies and so on. And I think it's really important that we recognize that we must follow those. We need to follow those. And there's a science to coaching. And the ICF has 8 core competencies in coaching. And so it's really important. I'm not de-emphasizing that, because what I've learned as I've been a longtime coaching educator, how quickly some people can immediately flip into, thanks, Sandra, can immediately I've seen this so many times where they start to do the coaching and then they very quickly flip into telling and knowing and consulting and so on and so forth. There is a science to this, that when you mostly, as much as possible, demonstrate and adhere to these the foundation, and that's why coaching is becoming so important now, because the other stuff isn't working all that well, especially during these times. So trust it, and trust doing that. Yep, stepping out, making some comments, stopping the coaching for a bit, and going into that place, but trusting and actually allowing yourself to almost let go with it, so that you're really riding with the person as they're moving through their particular, it's proven. There is a method to this, and the ICF has been, has worked so hard with this. And I mean, they just changed the competencies a little while ago and came up with these key ones. And it was based on a ton of feedback, a ton of research, et cetera, as what is really, really working to create that potent, powerful, effective conversation. And so when you get into it, you really want to make sure that you're not defaulting too fast, because I know I have.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. You have to, and that's why my point is, declare to yourself and to the coachee, where you're playing in this moment, in the statement you're about to make. This is, as your manager, or as your coach, or as somebody who's have experience in this, I would suggest this, or what about this as an idea? And so all of those kinds of setups to your comments take the hook out of it. One of the critical parts, and this is why the core competencies are so powerful to us. one of the critical points that the ICF continues to talk about is making sure that you're not, well, that you're, I'll reframe it. You are a facilitator of their conversation. You are facilitating their experience. You're not driving their experience. You're not telling them how to think. And so one of the things the ICF is very clear on is making sure that you are facilitating their conversation. Why did I just say that? Because I just gapped my point, but I'll come back to my point. I'm sure it's good.
Okay.
But it's, yeah, so if you're facilitating, you have to declare when you're not facilitating anymore. I'm no longer facilitating. I'm going to tell you my experience.
Yeah.
Get back to it.
And you know what I think it's time to do too?
Yes.
Is I think it's time to move into those 3 tips that we talked about and get more clear about it. And I really want to know, you know, what you think of them too, the people in this webinar, because so the tip number one is understanding the coachee's motivations, goals, and personality.
But isn't that what we've been talking? Isn't that, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's it.
And
that's
yes,
it.
and that is what's wrong in so many interactions that are going on out in the world today.
Right.
They're not understanding what's going on for that person, and that's why coaching is growing so fast. It's growing in the need, and I mean, because this is not what's happening. I mean, anybody who's been in organizations or working with, you know, various situations, how many times did you feel that they were really trying to understand? You actually had to keep your mouth shut and not say anything, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's shifting the agenda, right? And this is the one role in coaching where your job is to shift the agenda away from yours, the way you would do things, the way that your experience has described it to you. You shift it 100% to the other. And that's why I think those 4 words of understanding, to me, that's the answer to the uncoachable. Understand their current motivation. What's happening for them? Why is this subject of a particular, why are they rejecting conversation around this subject? What else is happening? And that's just a curious mindset. That's really just being curious.
Yes, and that ties to a comment Mary's just made. Hi, Mary. Are there descriptors for what evoking awareness entails? Previous slide, but nevertheless, to do with the competencies. That seems like it would be key to helping someone realize areas where they may need coaching.
Yeah, and Sandra's put up the link there, but that's absolutely true. There's very clear descriptors about setting agreements, the mindset that a coach has to have, maintaining presence, cultivating trust, and to this one is absolutely all about how do you evoke awareness. Yeah, number 7.
So, okay, so number 1, we've got identifying their motivations, goals, and personality, and how to work with these, not against them. All right, that's tip 1. And we talked about that. And tip number 2, help the coachee to see potential issues. How do we do that? That could end up derailing their upward trajectory. How do we do that?
Well, to me, that's why I like the coaching models that have the 5 steps in it. Because step 4 in most of those coaching models, step 1, 2, and 3 are all pretty much the same. Move to their agenda, discuss what needs to be discussed, set an action plan. But usually step 4 is all around, so what's going to stop you? And so I'm just kind of speaking, you know, what could end up derailing them. That's why I love the coaching process. You will get to the derailers. You will get to creating this magical, fantastic action plan that requires $1 million to invest, and you'll get to a step 4, and step 4 says, yeah, but do you have $1 million? Well, no. So let's go back to and so I think it's about not only allowing coachees to see what's possible around their potential and stretch them, but it's also for them to help them think it through. That's how I would read that point number 2 there, is that how do we help them understand the consequences or the upside or the downside for the actions that they create. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but I have another question around that. So, which is well said. And what do you find? Because you've been coaching 12,000 hours worth now. Were you doing that at the beginning? Were you doing that
The
after?
question is, did I do it yesterday? That's the real question.
Okay.
Right? No,
Okay.
man, of course not.
Yeah.
No.
But what have you noticed when you've done that? Because the whole point of this is to support the uncoachable as best we can, to be fabulous coaches when we're working with our coachees, whether they're coachable or not or whatever. But what happened for you that allowed you to do that? What was required of you, Merv? Maybe that's a better way to say it. What is required of you? What was required of you to be able to do
so
that?
the top of mind stuff says that because I'm an engineer, I like to solve problems. And so what's in it for me to deal with, using the 5 steps and is that I don't have to do the work. And I cannot tell you how many times I try to do the work. In fact, I had a client this morning, 10 o'clock, I did the work for them, which means it was a very ineffective conversation. I constantly learn that lesson that you really need to set up the conditions for the coachee to be successful. It's not about you. And I hope that's answering your question. I was just revealing a very particular observation this morning that I was a lousy coach at 10 o'clock today. But anyways, but yeah, we do it all the time. And it takes a long time to realize the difference between when you're just trying to be helpful, trying to be informative, to really, really adding value as a coach. It takes a while to figure that out.
Yeah, it really does. And this is a master certified coach we're talking to in Merv, and he said he had a lousy time this morning. He had a lousy he felt he did a lousy coaching session. That's gotta kind of, but that's real.
Well, it's very real. I mean, the client walked away with an action plan that I don't think that they were bolted to. And so when it fails, it's not their problem, is it?
Right. But sometimes that's what has to happen to support the forward movement. And they're doing this. Generally speaking, it'll happen faster than it would have without the coaching. In other words, they'll get to that place. Sometimes you'll start with somebody uncoachable going forward on something that isn't going to work. That's all part of the path. That's all part of the way. And the more you take the heat off yourself for being perfect is also really, really critical. So, but trying to help them, and sometimes helping them is getting them to commit to doing something, and out of them doing that, they discover, that's not the right, or that's, they surface some of those things. Again, this thing that's so cool about coaching is that forward movement and supporting them and moving farther, faster, easier, quicker than they would have without a coach. The more that I see in clients that are being coached, at least they get to, it's a lousy choice faster, because you're creating that structure of accountability for them to be able to discover this. It's not that we're perfection personified and we know all that. And I mean, there's so many great comments coming in.
I know it's hard to have a conversation and read the comments. That's why you hear me.
I know it's tricky. Well, how about this one? This other tip, helping the coachee discover how they can remain authentic, because that's a biggie. But add new approaches, thinking, and tools to achieve their goals. How do we do that? And I've had that so many times where they get really hung up. Well, that's not who I am. That's not, I know. And it's like opening it up to the possibilities of, well, what if you just experimented for a while and tried some of these other things on? I'm just using that as an example.
No, it's a good one. And you kind of take the opposite side of that, where coaching encourages people to be something they're not yet, right? And so we can very easily pull them out of their authentic space. We can very easily you know, maybe by nature you like to think about things, you like to process things, you like being on your own, and you know, sometimes we can put them in situations where now they have to be Mr. Social or Mrs. Social. They have to be out there doing things, and you know, we need to observe that we're pushing, you know, they're pushing themselves perhaps, but they're being pushed into being inauthentic because of
Right.
the skills or experiences or background, and sometimes we can get them hitched onto an idea that just will never be them, right?
Yes. Yeah. And there's some cool comments right here. Do you have an example of one of the biggest lessons learned on this topic that you feel comfortable sharing? Mary, thank you. And then Shauna comes back. Yes, I've had a coachee feel like they have to fake it. Oh my goodness. Raise your hand if any of you have had that experience. Because and then the other one, do you have an example of one of the biggest lessons learned on this topic that you feel comfortable sharing?
Oh, you know, I got a lessons learned,
Okay.
but go ahead. Sorry.
No, getting over myself.
Yes, go ahead.
Getting over myself and getting over that I have to be perfect and exceptional. And I have not been good many times. And I've had a client, you know, just be really upset and say, this isn't working for me, and was horrified, right? And but we worked through it and moved on. And I've had some, they're gone. I mean, you know, I've been in coaching a long time, and so yeah, I've had some of those too. It's you can't. We're not robots.
Right.
We're human beings. They're human beings. We're trying to ride along the side. The science is there. The value of coaching is there. It makes a difference, and it's not perfect, and it's messy.
Yes.
And everyone is uncoachable at different times on other ways, and you are riding along beside them as best you can to support them, and using these tips and using the competencies, it's all connected, to try to mine their wisdom, their brilliance, their way to move forward, and so on. That's your job, and it's not perfection personified.
Yep. Good point. Good point. I'll tell you, we got about 2 minutes left in this, so I want to let Sandra wrap up. I will tell you, my lesson learned very quickly is learning to know how to have a bit of an edge to me. So sometimes you kind of be a little, you know, a little more direct, you know. And I will tell you, the first time I tried that, I literally got kicked out of the CEO's office. I literally was told that I was never to go back to see the CEO again. So that was my first lesson. I have since changed my edge, but nonetheless.
But sometimes it's not going to work. I'm curious, and I can't remember if Sandra was going to ask. No, go ahead, Sandra. You were going to ask. What are you walking? We're getting close. We've got like 2 minutes.
We do. We have 2 minutes. Well, first and foremost, I just wanted to actually just thank our attendees for the impressive contributions in the chat for today, the insight coming in and the questions coming in and the dialogue that's being carried out, you know, separate even from your conversation has been incredibly impressive. And we appreciate each and every one of you. And I wanted to thank you and Merv for leading this discussion that obviously is a hot topic and one that we haven't actually touched on yet in our webinars. So my question for you is, what final thoughts do you have?
Well, my final thoughts are, again, with coaching, trust the wisdom, the brilliance in the room. And we're in a virtual room, and there is absolutely fantastic brilliance and people trusting and people seeing and people hearing, you know, authentic, real, being willing to be vulnerable, all of those pieces. They got nuggets. They, you know, thank you. I mean, they're walking away with some value. And so it can't be perfect. It's going to be messy. It's not going to be right every time, but keep going, because the world needs these kinds of conversations. We're starving for it.
Especially right now. So no,
especially right now.
been a wonderful hour. I know I've learned so much through the discussion as well. So we're going to sign off now. I wish all of you joining us today, tonight, this morning, whatever time zone you're in, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will hopefully see you next month for another similar topic that we'll be discussing.
Yeah, and thanks, Merv, for riding along beside me, because he doesn't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what he's going to say, and that's coaching too.
That's what makes it fun.
That's real. It's somewhat rehearsed, but not very much, really, as you can tell. So thanks, everybody, and I love seeing so many some familiar faces and some new faces, and so thank you so much for coming as well.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.